All right, I am going to get started. I want to be mindful of everyone's time. I have a half hour here talking about scaling up. And so I want to make sure I'm mindful of your time, try and make sure we're done right in 30 minutes. Good chance, I have some former colleagues here, they'll tell you I sometimes don't get through all the slides because I like to try and pack in as much as I can to add as much value as I can to the audience. Okay, but first I'll introduce Skayle 360. Company that I recently founded. It's a small business training company that is all about unlocking the growth potential of small businesses. It's based on my almost now 2 decades worth of experience helping businesses grow. And recently over the past year, I decided, why don't I package all of the learnings I've had in my career? I'm 50 years old at this point, to write a book. So I've written a book called Scale Up, and I've put this all into a training program, which I can talk about at the end for just 1 minute. Okay, but today what I want to really make sure that I have everyone leave with is at least a couple nuggets that you're like, you know what, it was worth me staying here for 30 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to go fast. There's going to be a lot of slides. Okay, if you'd like, I can certainly send you these slides via email after the fact, right? I'm at booth 429 if you want. Just come by my booth later. You can say, hey, I enjoyed the presentation, hopefully. Can you provide me with this deck? I can certainly do so. Okay, but the entire purpose here of these next 30 minutes is really to help you with some practical nuggets to grow your organizations, whether you're a nonprofit or whether you're a small business. A little bit about myself again. As I've mentioned, 20 years of really helping small businesses with their growth strategies. Okay, so since 2010, I actually started a marketing agency that I recently exited. So I have a lot of experience with helping hundreds of small businesses with that. And even before that, I was head of marketing for a $350 million savings bank, et cetera. So hopefully I have a lot of experience where what I say, you feel like there's some credibility to it. This is the book that I mentioned before called Scale Up. I have some at my booth. If you're interested, I can certainly provide you with that so you can learn more about, or if you want to really dive in, it's a 300-page book, but you can learn a lot more about everything that my training program entails. For today, we're really going to hit on 4 topics. Number 1 is building your content library, okay, website best practices, cutting-edge website tools, and sales enablement. Okay, and like I said, I wanted to make sure that each slide hopefully is as practical for you as possible, so it's not, I don't want you to leave here and say that was a fluffy presentation, right? I've been a part of a lot of fluffy presentations before, and I don't want that to be me. Okay, so just know that hopefully you'll see each slide has some meaning with some key takeaways. Okay, and if we do have time, like I said, I'll talk a little bit more about the training program that I've put together for small businesses in Massachusetts. Okay, so let's first start with building your content library. Why do I start there? I can't feel more strongly about this, right? For the years that I've been doing this, companies that I've worked with, if they don't have content, if they don't have strong content, all right, I call it the bait at the end of their fishing rod, as you can see here. Without getting that bait right at the end of your fishing rod, you're not going to go anywhere with your marketing efforts. And I'm just stating that as a cold, hard fact. Okay, a lot of organizations say, okay, what's the next big thing? What's the next tactic? Should I be on TikTok? What should I be doing? And I always say, let's first start with your content. Because if you don't have good bait at the end of that fishing rod, the bait being your content, you're not going to really be catching many fish. Okay, so you really want to make sure that before you jump into spending any money on paid marketing, you've got to think, do I have a robust enough marketing or content library, right, for the end of that fishing rod? Okay, if there's any takeaway, it sounds basic, but I can tell you, if you don't invest in content, it's going to be a real uphill battle for you to ever see success with your marketing efforts. And I can say that, like I said, because for 13 years I led a marketing agency and saw what worked and what didn't. Companies that agreed that they needed to invest in content typically won, and those that didn't and were impatient and just wanted to get to the tactics typically lost. Okay? Again, in terms of the power of this library, right, where it's all about, of course, attracting and engaging up front. It's about nurturing leads, and it's about establishing thought leadership and authority. Okay, so you have to be thinking about the journey that a prospect and a customer has with your brands, with your companies. And you've got to start at that attract and engage phase, right? To be, when they're actually researching, because they're going to research, they're not just going to be hard sold anymore. Especially younger generations, they don't want the hard sell. They want to do the research on their own. Okay, so you need to make sure that you're attracting and engaging with content right up front when they're in the decision-making stage of whether or not you have a solution to their pain points. So you've got to be investing up front. You've got to be thinking about nurturing those leads, because just because they're in your pipeline, don't think that that's just going to be a conversion. So you've got to be thinking about the different stages of your sales pipeline and think about where you can be inserting more and more juicy content. Okay, so if there's anything I'll say here is marketing actually is becoming more and more important, okay, than anything, than sales, frankly, because if you're a really good salesperson, oftentimes it's because you've got great marketing to bring someone to the point where they actually will speak with you. Okay? If they're just speaking with you for the first time without having any content and without digesting after the fact with third-party validation and thought leadership, your conversion rate as a salesperson is going to be far, far lower. So you've got to be investing in content. Okay, in terms of types of content, right, you've got to first start with developing your brand story. Again, a lot of companies feel like this is the fluffy part. Let's not talk about fluff, let's talk about results and ROI. If we talk about developing a brand story, okay, or incorporating testimonials into your website from your happy clients, or highlighting your unique selling proposition of how you're different, those are all fluffy things that you can't like tie an ROI to. And in my years, oftentimes really smart CEOs would make themselves feel even smarter by saying, if I can't tie an ROI to it, I'm not going to do it. And the magic happens here with your brands. And you don't have to pay anything for it. Okay, you've got to invest in your brands. Invest in your message. Invest in third-party validation with video testimonials. I'm investing today. I've got Reagan here, right, where I'm investing in putting this video onto my website eventually. Do I think that it's going to pay off? I don't know. Can I tie a direct ROI to this? No, I can't, frankly. But I know that I'm investing in my brand, and I know I want to think long-term and not just short-term, right? And I'm not saying not to just think short-term, because, again, the saying is you've got to eat while you dream. So you've got to make sure you have direct response marketing so that you can eat. That might be Google paid search. That might be other avenues that you can go to try and get some quick wins. But while you're doing that, you've got to be investing longer term, for the long term, being long-term greedy with your companies. And that's with doing things like this. Okay, I can't say it enough. Okay? So here's examples, of course. I'm sure you've heard these. Whether it's white papers, case studies, engaging videos, or educational blog posts, you want to be starting to think about the different types of content for that library. Okay, what does that look like? Okay, and I can tell you, content is no longer just about words. It's about video. Here's a video that I'm doing. Okay, I'm not even a year old as a company at this point. I already have video on my website. Right? I have a lot of video on my website because that's the most powerful form of content that you have. Okay, and nowadays with tools that are out there, you can be investing in video for 10 cents on the dollar as to how expensive it was just 5 or 10 years ago with what technology can now do for you and with what AI can now do for you as well. Okay, so no longer is a small business, no longer do you have your hand tied behind your back to say, well, the bigger guys, the bigger competitors, they can be completely destroying me with all of this content Chris is talking about. With AI today and the tools that are out there, you can be doing this yourselves on a very small budget. Okay, given that we're all small businesses here. So here's one example. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of Jasper AI before, but with Jasper, you can be putting, you can think of ChatGPT. Jasper is just more specific to content writing. Okay, you can be leveraging an AI tool now like Jasper, where you're not spending more than $20 a month to be handling just about all of your content needs that you can think of. Okay, you no longer have to be hiring an internal content team, right, to be pulling this off. You can be using AI. Okay, and this is just the beginning, right? There's so many other tools that you could be using. Here's another called Spin Rewriter AI. You get that piece of content. Let's say it is a piece of content. It's not a video. With Spin Rewriter, you can generate up to 1,000 articles from that one piece of copy. Okay, I've tried this. It's mind-blowing with what's out there right now. Okay, so again, I don't want you to leave here to say, yeah, Chris is talking about content and how important it is. It's the most important piece of my business, but doesn't he know I have a $10,000 marketing budget? Yep, I do. And you can now pull it off, frankly. Right, the last 5 blog posts that I wrote for Skayle 360, do you know how long that took me? 2 hours. And Rob Meyer will tell you I'm a bit of a perfectionist when it comes to my own content. Okay, so with the right tools and the right education, right, you no longer need to have a full team here doing this. Okay, so that's content. Now let's talk about website. Again, I want to try and keep this as practical as possible. I'm not going to talk about everything you've already heard about website. Right, I just want to give you at least my sort of best practices over the years that I've seen for small business. Okay, number one, you should know the stats, right? 75% of users judge your website, your credibility based on your website design and what it looks like. Very quickly, impression. Okay, sort of like my son is a tennis player, frankly, so I've grown up playing tennis. I can tell within 10 seconds with having a kid hit one shot whether or not he's good or not. I can do the same with a website. And anyone can, frankly, right? You're going to have an impression. Okay, so you can't discount just how important it is to be investing in your website. It is the foundational asset that you've got to be thinking about here. Okay, you might say, yeah, I already know that. Okay, so let's move on. Number one, you've got to make sure that you want to just be thinking about less is more for your website. For a lot of small businesses that are out there, what I've seen at least in my years, is you don't think less is more, not you, right? Small business owners typically don't think less is more. They think more is more. So I look at the homepage and there's a ton of copy. Okay, and all I say is go to Apple. Go to apple.com, take a look at their website. Okay, tell me how much copy they have versus image versus video versus things that are engaging versus paragraphs and paragraphs of copy. Okay, so just remember, you want to make sure that it's simple. Your website is simple. There's a lot of white space. There's bold visuals and statements that aren't drowned out by paragraphs. And you want a very intuitive navigation on that homepage to make it as easy as possible. Okay? Number two, I mentioned this a bit ago, you've got to make sure you're getting video on your website, frankly. I think we all know, I'm one of them, I don't want to read, right? If I can help it, I'm not going to read for more than 5 minutes. Okay? I'd much rather take a look at an engaging video. Okay? And now, like I said, with the power of technology and AI today, this can happen without you having to spend exorbitant amounts of dollars. Okay, so make sure that when you're thinking website, that other than, again, making sure that that first slide, you nail that. Second is, well, maybe I can tell a company story through video. Maybe I can make sure that I get my clients who are happy with me on video through their screen like a Zoom, so we don't even have to set this up in person where they can do this at their own leisure through technology. Why don't we make sure we get 4 or 5 testimonials from our clients on our website? Because nowadays, third-party validation is far more important than anything. No one wants to be sold anymore, especially younger generations. I'll keep saying that. Okay, so you need to make sure you have others saying good things about you. And video is a perfect way to do that. You want to get away from testimonials where it's 3 sentences from John B. Right? It's like, I don't believe that. I think you made it up. Right? I've seen that forever. It's commoditized. Okay? Video is so powerful. You've got to be thinking about making sure whether it's your company video, which would be your foundational video, and then client video testimonials need to be on your sites. And eventually, depending on your type of business, if you're B2B, for example, business to business, you want to make sure that you have product demo videos. Like there's a million different, not a million, right? There's another dozen brainstorming ideas we could have of the types of video you can have on your website. Okay, you also have to make sure you are completely personalizing the experience for your visitors. The days of just having a homepage with a message, right, are gone. You want to get to the point where you figure out your different audiences or industries that you're selling into, and then you're very specific with leading someone down those different pathways with specific messaging, okay, with specific lead magnets, white papers, case studies, specific to their pain points, okay? You want to make sure you're doing that instead of you just have a website that just speaks to everybody. Everyone now has been completely spoiled by mega cap tech, by the Metas of the world and the Googles of the world, and now what's happening right now with OpenAI, where they are expecting a personalized experience and message, okay? And most small businesses don't do that, which is great, right? Because now all of a sudden you have an opportunity to really separate yourselves. But I want to know you're solving my pain points, not just talking in generalities. And lastly, this goes without saying, this might be the one fluffy slide, you got to make sure that website is mobile friendly. Okay, so make sure that, there's tips here with what you can do with simplified menus, right? Touch-friendly buttons, right? More than half of your traffic, your visitors, are judging you and your website based on their phone. So you could have a wonderful desktop experience, but ultimately if it's not as perfected as possible for a phone, you're going to lose someone very fast. Okay, so you got to make sure that you are, and nowadays, by the way, it's very easy. If you have WordPress, for example, most of the templates that are out there are responsive. They're called being responsive design templates. So they're responsive to whatever medium it is, whether it's a phone, a tablet, or a desktop or a laptop. So if you haven't upgraded your website in a while, you want to be thinking about my recommendation. If you're a very small business, right, without a big budget at this point, you want to be thinking of WordPress, and you want to be thinking of making sure it's a responsive template that you can buy from a template monster portal for $50 that you can then customize. Okay? Here's some cutting-edge website tools. Let's stay on website for a second. Okay, because again, just a brochure-like website's not going to do anymore. Okay, I don't know if anyone's ever heard of Crazy Egg before. Hey, Jeff. Good. I don't know if you've heard of Crazy Egg before, but it's a way that you can actually see your visitors on the website where their eyeballs are actually focusing in on. It's a heat map for your website. Okay, most small businesses don't know about it. Okay, so it's a wonderful tool to be able to see where you're actually attracting eyeballs and where you're not, and where people are actually leaving your website. Okay, it's a very inexpensive tool that you can be using. Another for your SEO, your search engine optimization efforts, a tool is called Yoast. It's a plugin for WordPress. Okay, so know that you might say, boy, it's a whole other language. I have no idea how to optimize my website for organic traffic, right, to be on the first page of Google. Well, welcome to Yoast. That's just one tool. There are many that are out there where you can literally now be writing out your title tags, your meta tags, your meta descriptions, all using Yoast. And there's so much more Yoast can be doing for you as well, frankly. That's just literally like the tip of the iceberg. But if you're wondering, SEO seems like it's just so vague and confusing and I don't know where to start with a tool like Yoast where you literally at least can be doing what's called on-page optimization for your websites using Yoast. It's a plugin with WordPress. Another tool is called SEMrush. With SEMrush, it's also SEO friendly with what I talked about, but I'll give you one cool tidbit about SEMrush. Some people call it SEMrush, right, is ultimately you can be figuring out and looking at what your competitors are doing online with their paid media, right, for Google paid search, for example. You'll be able to see where they're spending their money. You'll be able to see where they're ranking on certain keywords, okay? You'll be able to then say, okay, you know what, they're ranking on these 50 keywords. Let's start coming up with an organic or paid strategy to start making sure we're sopping up some of those crumbs on our plate also. And you can also find out backlinks that are going to your competitors' websites. So it's a wonderful tool to do a lot of market research and competitor research that you can then be using for your own websites. And also, it's just nice, it's a nice little tool also where you can see for each keyword out there where you're ranking. Page 1, page 2, page 3 on Google. Okay, and then you can come up with the strategy to say, how am I going to get myself from 2 to 1? Because guess what? If you're on the second page of Google, you know, you're missing 90% of the traffic that's out there. You've got to be on the first page. Okay? Chatbots. So again, with the rise of AI, right, chatbots are becoming the thing, right? So It's almost reaching $1 billion by the end of this year in terms of the global chatbot market. And again, there are free chatbots that are out there. Drift is one of them, if you've heard of Drift before. If you've heard of HubSpot before, Drift was basically some employees from HubSpot decided to leave and start Drift. They coined the term conversational marketing. Okay, so just know that with Drift, you can now have a chatbot on your website and you don't need to have a human like going back and forth like the old days. You're like, I can't do that. I need someone 24/7. That's not the case at all anymore, of course. And I'm not just promoting Drift, right? This is an example, and they're local here in Boston, where that's a free tool that you can be using, where you can turn it on when you're in business, right? When your lights are on from 9 to 5, and there can then be an interactive experience happening when someone is at their desk. Okay, which is fantastic, because you want your website to be as engaging as possible. Get away from thinking of this as a brochure, your website. It's got to be interactive, whether it's video or whether it's even this type of chatbot that we're talking about. This is the next level, right? So if we're talking about chatbots on steroids, okay, now with OpenAI, if you've learned all about Sam Altman and what's going on with his partnership with Microsoft and Copilot AI, they've now come up with what's called custom GPTs. You can put together a custom GPT for your company where, based on just your content, your thought leadership, you can create basically a chatbot on your website where someone asks questions and you are the thought leader with that custom GPT, and you can be going back and forth. You can also sell that custom GPT as well if you want to try and make money eventually with Apple. That's coming. But I wouldn't do it for that reason right now, right? I wouldn't want to get distracted on another venture. I'd want to just show just what a thought leader I am with my own custom GPT. So an example, with Scale Up, the book that I've written, I've now trained my GPT, okay, to be able to then, when someone comes to that page of my website, they start asking questions, it can then be spitting out answers. Is it perfect? It's not. There's a long way to go. But it will be there in the next year or two. And that's another differentiator for you as a small business, because I can almost guarantee you your competitors are not even thinking about that. Lastly, for website tools, again, just like I did for the other section, right, this is the no-brainer. But I can tell you that most of you probably aren't really using Google Analytics and what's called now GA4. Okay, but I'd argue you need to know the traffic that's coming to your website. This is free. You put a snippet of code on your website, and you'll be able to see where that traffic's coming from. Right? If you are investing in different channels, what channels are driving that traffic, where someone's leaving your website, etc. Right? So this is the no-brainer, okay, that you just, if you don't have, you got to make sure you're embracing. Okay, now last section here. Let's talk about, how am I doing on time here? Let's talk about sales enablement. Good, I have 5 minutes. Okay, so here's some quick tidbits on sales enablement. Okay? You've got to start thinking about virtual selling, especially now post-COVID. Right? I went from, Rob Meyer will tell you, I went from putting 300,000 miles in my Prius to be meeting in person with everyone. Okay, that's how I always sold, to then having to realize I had to sell online. Okay, and that has stayed with us. And that's only going to continue to increase. So salespeople in the room here, and we're entrepreneurs, right? We're small business owners. We're all salespeople. We've got to be thinking about virtual selling as part of sales enablement. Okay, so again, quick stat, right? Gartner study found that 80% of B2B, business-to-business sales interactions between suppliers and buyers will occur in digital channels by the end of this year. Okay, so what do I mean by this, virtual selling? Okay, I'll give one example. Okay, I've used this before, okay, called Client Point. Now with Client Point, you literally now, as a small business, you can be, let's pretend we have a meeting for a moment. Okay, so Jeff, we're going to get a meeting together. I just met you, right? I'm going to say, hey, Jeff, you know, instead of me sending you a Zoom link, I'm going to send you a Client Point. And with Client Point, once you then click on that link, you're going to go into my own virtual sales environment. That's branded Skayle 360 as an example. And I know what you do for a living. You're in logistics, so I'm going to make sure that I have all of my folders specific to your industry. Okay, and I'm going to give you your proposal after we speak in that environment. I'm going to send it to you through Client Point. And you're going to be able to go into your folder that's fully personalized for you and be able to then open up your proposal. And we can get to the point where I'll then send you your agreement through that virtual sales environment as well. and you can take a look at all my case studies, you can look at all my white papers, you can look at everything in your own environment. That's an example, okay, of what I'm talking about with sales enablement that's now available to small businesses. And I'm not getting paid anything from Client Point. That's just one example of a tool that you can be using. That's a virtual sales enablement platform that you should be thinking about for sales. Another, I'm sure Rob will chuckle here because he knows I love Vidyard. Okay, another tool here is Vidyard. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of Vidyard before. Okay, but with Vidyard, we're talking sales right now. We're off of website. Right now, all of a sudden, if I wanted to communicate with Jeff, okay, even to prospect with Jeff to try and eventually even get a meeting with him before I even get him into that virtual environment I just mentioned, I can send him a Vidyard video, remember video, about content. I'm going to send him an email, and it's going to be me waving, saying, hey, Jeff, how are you? It's Chris here at Skayle 360. I took a look at your website, and I know that I can help you. Do you have 10 minutes to talk? And it's a video in his email stream. Okay, that's just one example of using Vidyard. I can also send my proposal with Vidyard as well. Hey, Jeff, here's my proposal. I want to walk you through it using Vidyard right now. Okay, on and on. You can, literally, we can brainstorm 20 different ways that you can be using a tool like Vidyard for your sales enablement. Okay? And it works. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yep, thank you, Jeff. Okay, a couple more and we'll be done, right? I want to be mindful of your time. Zoom Info, okay, they're huge. Okay, if you haven't heard of them, they're publicly traded at this point. Okay, but if you're wondering, well, you know, there's only so much I can do to get someone to my website and sign up for my e-newsletter, and I'm not going to get much scale with that, right? It's called inbound marketing. I'd argue you can also be considering outbound marketing, which before, right, was sort of a sin, which I fully disagree with, where you can use a platform like Zoom Info. You can also use another platform called Apollo.io, where you literally can go in, you can build your list of people that don't know you. You can build your list. You can do automated drip email marketing from these two platforms, okay? And you can also be doing LinkedIn outreach. And if you want, you can also be doing outbound calling, all through the same platform, all to that same list that you're loading in, and you're using their lists. Okay, so if you're wondering, how am I going to be growing, you should be thinking about Zoom Info and Apollo. I'll tell you, Apollo's about $100 a month. Zoom Info is much more expensive. So I'm showing you the Cadillac here. Okay, but there are lower-end offerings as well that can be just fine. The quality of the data won't be as good. But again, if you have a $10,000 annual marketing budget, beggars can't be choosers. Right? Same with me. Okay? Just wanted to throw in, again, we're talking sales enablement, wanted to throw in at least an AI tool here or there. Okay, if you haven't heard of Beautiful.ai, okay, if you want to bring your sales presentation to the next level or build a pitch deck from scratch, you should be taking a look at Beautiful.ai. Okay, you literally can be building out, it's not going to be perfect at first, of course, it needs you, it needs the human. There, your AI is an assistant, it's not just going to do everything for you. But you can now start building out pitch decks and sales presentations using this type of tool, and it's only going to get better. Dolly is another. If you haven't heard of Dolly before, if you then say, you know what, I need a nice picture for my sales presentation on whatever, industrial machinery that's making this type of part. With Dolly, which is part of ChatGPT and OpenAI, using Dolly, you now can come up with those types of images. Okay? I'm going to end with, I believe it's this and maybe one other tool. You might say, yeah, I know Calendly already. Calendly, for salespeople, again, sales enablement, instead of going back and forth, right, and saying, okay, what's good on your calendar? What's good on my calendar? Let's figure out our calendars. You just create your own Calendly link. You can send that link to that individual, and they can place time on your calendar. So some of you might not have heard of Calendly before. Calendly on steroids, what you can do, right, if you were ever to go to my website, Skayle360.com, you'll see that my calendar, my Contact Us page is Calendly driven. You can book time on my calendar, and you can see the calendar on my contact page that's powered by Calendly. And guess what? If you then click on that and you set up a meeting, it'll automate onto your calendar. You'll then be driven to a landing page that you can automate, where even before your first meeting, right, you can have someone fully up to speed with what you're going to be talking about. It's a marketing landing page that you can be tying in. So it all depends on how much you want to be leveraging Calendly. Don't think it's just you can send a link for someone to go on your calendar. It can be fully branded, and it can be like game-changing from my perspective on separating you from your small business competitors, if you do it right. And then lastly, Otter.ai. There's also many other tools, Fireflies. For sales enablement, if we have a meeting, I want to make sure that I'm providing meeting summaries. Okay, and this is an AI tool that will allow you to fully summarize a meeting with notes and provide that to your prospect if you'd like. And also, if you just have questions about what I talked about, come talk to me. And if you want this deck, come talk to me too. All I need is your email address, and I will shoot this to you. Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate it.